Good afternoon again, everybody. My name is Don Reese, and I'm the Vice President of Sales here at LinkPoint 360. And thanks so much for joining today's webinar around the different Salesforce email integration options. Giving a quick intro on LinkPoint 360 and our the fact that we've been around for about 20 years now, offering email to Salesforce integration solutions. We have about 150,000 users in 60 different countries, and we work on a variety of different platforms, PC, Mac, mobile, and webmail. So in terms of the agenda, the big discussion for this call was just around the limitations of the current out-of-the-box solutions from Salesforce. So there's so many out there today, it can get a little confusing. How and where your Salesforce will store your emails, your events, if you guys are using Einstein Activity Capture or you're considering it, there's a lot of important factors that you need to take into consideration so you can fully understand the solution. What's happening with Lightning Sync and Salesforce for Outlook? You probably have heard that Salesforce for Outlook has been retired or is being retired at the end of 2023, but you'll see today that they've actually already started sunsetting some certain features. And then we'll just also talk about some alternative options, that if the Salesforce tools aren't going to work for you. So in terms of the kind of the state of the email integration, you look at this slide and Salesforce is throwing a lot at you, right? Salesforce for Outlook, Lightning for Outlook, Inbox, Einstein Activity Capture, Lightning Sync. It can be, very confusing, right, in terms of which solutions, should I be using? Sometimes people see Salesforce for Outlook and they're like, how could anybody still be using Salesforce for Outlook? Lightning for Outlook's been around for years now. And shockingly, quite a very, large number of Salesforce customers still use the Salesforce for Outlook solution. And we'll kind of go over, kind of why that is. Today. It's a lot different than the Lightning tool, whereas the Salesforce Outlook is more of an on-premise, highly secure solution, where the Lightning for Outlook tool has some different cloud and exchange components to it that some organizations might not be comfortable with. Okay, so in terms of just kind of a review of the timeline, right, in terms of over the last, let's say, 7 to 8 years, you can see here all the different things like I just mentioned in terms of all the different tools and the names and the changing of names that has happened. And really, to kind of summarize this, to date, there really is just one tool, which is the Outlook or Gmail integration, right? Salesforce for Outlook is no longer being offered to new customers. So Lightning for Outlook has been renamed that Outlook or Gmail integration. And then you really have two different sync options, right? You have Lightning Sync, which allows users to, view, create, and edit records, and they can manually record emails or events back to Salesforce, right? Or they can also use the Einstein Activity Capture, right? Which there is a kind of a standard free version, and then there's a paid version, whereas basically what that's going to do is it's going to record everything, back to Salesforce, whether you want to or not. And there certainly could be some concerns about cluttering your Salesforce, with a lot of information, making it harder for the end users to find, let's say, certain emails or events from the past. And just real quick to talk about the Salesforce for Outlook retirement, like I said, it's been pushed to the end of 2023, but as of last June, they stopped allowing users the ability to create new records from the Outlook or Gmail side panel. So the ability to create a new contact or lead or opportunity, all of that had to be done now in Salesforce. And, really the last thing when you look at all these tools, the one area that no matter what, you can't use any of these tools is if you have any kind of community licenses. So if you're using Salesforce Community, and you have users, unfortunately, they're not going to be able to use any of the Salesforce tools. Okay. All right. So the technical differences, right, between these Salesforce tools and either whether it's Salesforce for Outlook or It's the Lightning for Outlook, right? I'm going to bring in Glenn Lehner here in a couple minutes just to talk about some of those differences. But like I said before, the big reason why so many organizations are still using the original Salesforce for Outlook tool, right, is that it's basically a local install, and it doesn't have any cloud or Exchange components to it. Right, the Salesforce for Outlook tool is locally installed. The sync runs between the end user Salesforce and their Outlook, and a result, like I said, it's considered probably the most secure since no data ever leaves the organization's environment. There's no need to access the company's Exchange. The Lightning for Outlook tool is an add-in which requires the organization to open up access to their Exchange server in order to sync data between Outlook and Salesforce. A lot of organizations see this as a security concern. They don't want to allow this type of access. And what I wanted to do is kind of turn it over to Glenn, and he can kind of just give us a couple of reasons as to why if you went to your IT or your Exchange departments to get this access, where they may have an issue. So, Glenn, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Don. So typically your research on which email integration tool to select really should involve both the business and technical aspects. Typically, only the technical requirements get considered when it pertains to Microsoft Exchange. However, a wide range of risks and compliance questions may arise from your security, your data privacy, your compliance, and even your Microsoft Exchange teams. Some of the concerns your Exchange team may have are, for example, what authentication is required to access Microsoft Exchange? Is it using OAuth-based, or is it using username and password that's stored on the server? And based upon which Salesforce tool you might select, that the answer to that question can vary. Also, what comes up is, well, what Exchange security permissions are required? And the reason that would come up is because the appropriate teams want to make sure that does the tool restrict itself to have only access to the user's email, calendar, and contact data, or does it have access to all the Exchange data for that particular user? Because there's a lot of other data that is accessible based upon permissions for a particular user beyond those standard data elements. Another major concern is what performance impact it can have on the Exchange servers and network. So for example, you may only have 100 Salesforce users using Salesforce out of a 10,000 plus employee organization. So is it possible, or could it cause Exchange or network performance issues resulting in a critical impact on the entire Exchange user base of the organization? So it doesn't only impact, let's say, the Salesforce users, it could impact everybody within the organization. Those are some concerns that the Exchange team may have regarding, any sort of integration that you are researching and doing analysis on. But beyond the Exchange team, the other teams like your security, your data privacy, your compliance teams will assess what potential risks they might see within the integration. So it may not be technical with Exchange, but it could be other technical areas or business areas. So for example, they may want to know where and what type of data is being stored. So is the data actually being stored in Salesforce, or is it on an external server like AWS in a Einstein activity capture example? They may also want to know if the data stored complies with the proper privacy and compliance laws. So in another example, EAC, or Einstein Activity Capture, records all emails externally of Salesforce on AWS servers. Well, that may be a risk that they identify that which may need to be mitigated or not, or won't be permitted. So not only may that be a concern, but others concerns might include, for example, Salesforce doesn't currently provide the ability to prevent certain emails from being captured or stored. So therefore, there's no ability in Salesforce to monitor or programmatically read, update, or delete any Einstein activity captured data. So, as a Salesforce customer, you don't have the choice of what you would like recorded and not recorded. typically you create technical things like triggers or workflow process, process builder type flows to prevent certain things. There, with EAC, that's not possible. Additionally, Salesforce doesn't provide the ability to report on EAC data. And most think about reporting on EAC data for sales purposes. However, the reporting may also be required for compliance reasons. What data is there? Is there personal information? Is there confidential type information being stored on Salesforce that shouldn't be out there? So the things that you really have to consider when evaluating the different integration tools is you need not only think about what's best for the end users of Salesforce, but you also have to consider the other technical, security, and legal concerns of the organization. And the teams this would involve would be your Microsoft Exchange team, your security team, your data privacy and compliance teams. So those are the teams that are most important to get involved so they understand exactly what's happening, even more than so the technical aspects of it.
Okay. Well, thanks, Glenn. I appreciate that. And just a couple other bullet points here. Obviously Outlook version, is very important, and even the hybrid Exchange environment. Some organizations have different versions of Outlook. Obviously, you need to be on, a more recent version of Outlook. It has to be Exchange-based. So if people that are working in G Suite, type environments or mixed environments, the Salesforce tools will not work. And also, Glenn mentioned, from a technical difference, obviously the records. That's a big piece. We're going to talk more about that in on the next slide. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so just to kind of summarize, some of the things that we just talked about. When you talk about Salesforce solutions and let's say external solutions such as LinkPoint Connect, we talked about the Exchange Web Service access. There's none of that is required. Obviously, it is with the out of the box tool. From administrative setup, this is kind of a separate topic. There is work that you do have to do within your Salesforce to get these tools to work versus an option that's just kind of a plug and play. Another thing that comes up very frequently that a lot of organizations don't realize is that if you go with one of these EAC inbox, you have to do it across all of your users, right? So you can't just have certain subsets of users. You need to have all of them on it. And of course, there's certain versions, more of the enterprise type versions that are necessary or needed in order to utilize these Salesforce tools. Okay, so this is a big one, right? We're going to talk more about this, about the, knowing where your data is stored. And Glenn kind of alluded to that if you use a tool like Einstein Activity Capture, the records are visible, right, in Salesforce, like a recorded email or an event. You could see it in the timeline history under the account or opportunity, but really it's just a mirror image of the actual record that's stored on an AWS server, right? So again, the fact that they're not stored, there, there's ramifications to that because it's not. You'll find out in a couple of minutes. It's not stored, for forever. There's certain, restraints around the ability, and also that gets affected is reporting, right? If you want to be able to run the correct reports on different activities, there's challenges with that. So let's take a look at some of the kind of the use case concerns, right? So your sales development team is trying to win an opportunity that they, today from a company that they, were trying to get the business from 3 years ago. So their current contract is up for renewal. They went out to bid again, and you're trying to win that particular business. So, me being as a business development rep, it would be great for me to go back 3 years ago and see, maybe that old sales rep isn't even here anymore. Maybe I just don't have a lot of information. Maybe, the manager's gone and I really am depending on Salesforce to give me some really good information on the email exchanges, the types of events, just any other insight that I can get to help us win that business. Well, that's not going to be there, right? So if you have the standard version of EAC, it's only going to store that data from up to 6 months. Okay, and then if you're on the paid version, it's only going to be on 2 years. So obviously, it puts your your sales team at a disadvantage by not getting access to that data. Another big use case: a Salesforce user who's been on Einstein Activity Capture has left the company. Okay, this is a pretty standard use case, I would think. Well, once that license is provisioned to another user, right, all of that data from the previous user who recorded is removed from Salesforce. It's no longer visible. Okay, so again, loss of insight on historical, data that could be used from a sales perspective, from an account management perspective, from an account analysis perspective. That's a big issue. And the last one we want to talk about is from a reporting perspective. So we talked about how long it will store it, but if you go in and you try to run these reports, right, these activity data reports, through using the EAC tool, it's only going to be able to go back 90 days for the standard version, 180 days on the paid version. So again, if I'm somebody that wants to look at activities from the first 6 months of the year compared to the first 6 months to the last 6 months of the year, in terms of activity, again, it's really not going to give me the information that I would want to see in terms of the activity. So again, with the LinkPoint 360 tool, as an example, we're going to put everything into Salesforce. It's going to be stored in in the activity history. It's going to be an actual record. You're going to be able to report on it, and you'll be able to report on it using any of the time frames that you currently use today. Okay, so some of the other feature differences when we talk about these different tools, right? So with the Lightning for Outlook or the Outlook integration tools, it was always a minimum of 3 clicks just to record a single email, right? So users complained about that. Well, that made Einstein Activity Capture sound that much better. No clicks. Everything just gets automatically recorded. So as we know, there's a lot of obviously challenges with that of putting a lot of extra data. If we go back and forth on what time we're going to meet today and we go back 4 or 5 times, guess what? Every one of those emails is going to get recorded into Salesforce. Whereas if you have a solution like LinkPoint, it's a 1-click email. And I can also 1-click record to a custom object, a standard object. Okay, and that's something else to point out with the EAC is that you can't do auto capture to custom objects. You can only do auto capture to a standard object. So again, the focus is trying to reduce the clicks, make it as easy as possible, be able to get an email from somebody that's not in Salesforce, and with 1 click, be able to add them, completely with their name, their address, their phone number, all of their personal information automatically into Salesforce. Something else that's really important is the ability to capture, required task or event fields. So when an event is created in Outlook and you want it to sync up to Salesforce, well, when it syncs up to Salesforce, you want all the fields and everything to be completely filled out, right? We offer the ability to do that. And another really kind of neat thing is we give you the ability to actually edit the email that's going into Salesforce. Why would you do this? Well, as you start to record lots of emails in Salesforce, you're going to see lots of emails with the same subject line. Sometimes you want things to stand out, right, in an activity history timeline to make it easier to find. So we let you kind of edit that subject line and also let you add additional notes to the email that's being recorded. Okay. Some of the other features that we have is the ability to track email opens. So you send an email out, you'd love to know when that person opens the email. We have this really cool app that lets you, when your sales teams are out on the road and they come out of a meeting and the meeting notes are fresh in their mind, that they can quickly go through this experience on their cell phone and quickly, speak or type their notes into Salesforce and have it get mapped, directly to the fields that you want. Another big difference with the Salesforce tools is that, especially for inbox, right, is that it uses an external its own app, and within its app, it has its own email client. So again, a lot of organizations might not be comfortable with something in the middle of an email flow. Our tool is Outlook-based, so you can install it in Outlook, and wherever you have, Outlook, you also have the ability to see it there, and you also have the ability to create follow-ups or next steps when you record something to Salesforce. So I record an email, I want to create a task, and I want to do it at the same time in as few clicks as possible. So clicks is definitely a big thing that you'll see, a difference between our tool and the out-of-the-box Salesforce tool. Okay. So with that being said, we're coming towards the end of our webinar and wanted to open it up and see if there are any questions at this time.
There is one question, Don. One of the attendees asked, is LP360 is a PC application that only connects installed Outlook app only? Does it work with 365 web apps? It's not working on the desktop.
Yep, so we have two different versions of our tool. We have the local installed version, which is similar to the Salesforce for Outlook, where, again, locally installed, it's an Outlook plugin. Everything syncs locally between the user. And then we also have an add-in version of our tool that would be installed through the MS add-in store. And since it's Outlook-based, it would be available in any of those applications, OWA, desktop, or mobile. They'd be able to see that.
Okay, one more question. Do you have a version that also runs as an automatic email capture?
We do, absolutely. So, and that's a great question because yes, our auto capture tool will store the emails in Salesforce, so as actual records, unlike the AWS. You also have the ability to link it to not only standard objects, but custom objects as well.
Okay, I know we're coming down to the last few minutes. Someone did ask, are we going to send a recording of afterwards? Yes, we will be sending out the link later today or tomorrow to all the attendees.
Yeah, and for those people, ask those questions, or anybody else is interested in some more information. Here's a couple of links to if you'd like to trial our tool. You certainly you can trial it out for a couple weeks to see how it works, or if you'd like to get a more personalized demo or dive in a little bit deeper on our capabilities, you can certainly put a request for a demo as well.
Another question just popped in again. Does the user get to pick which emails to track?
Yes. So if we're talking about email open tracking, the user can do one of two ways. They can decide which emails that they want to have email open tracks, or they can have every email just tracked for when it's opened. If we're talking about email recording, because sometimes that word's used in both situations, yes, users can decide which emails are important that they want to record back to Salesforce, or if they want to have all of the emails automatically recorded.
Oh.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the webinar today, and look forward to hearing and hopefully speaking to some of you in the future. And like Len said, we'll get that out to you today, and feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Thank you very much.